In this lesson, we'll learn how to create control curves. So the next thing we need to think about is how we will conveniently control our airship. You can see if we were to go in and try to select a few pieces and start to move those around, we can grab the move tool at the top or use the hotkey E. You can see it's not convenient to animate the entire aircraft. And of course we can go ahead and grab the aircrafts group from our objects manager, but still it's very inconvenient to control this if we have to constantly select that object from here. So instead we can make it a little bit easier for the animator by creating a control curve or spline that they can grab directly from our viewport. Now why use a spline object? Well, it's simple. They do not render. So what we could do then is create, again, a control object that we don't have to worry about showing up in our render, but that the animator can just go in and get right to work animating with. So let's say we go ahead and get started. Now, there are a set of rules I like to keep in mind when creating controls, and I'll go ahead and share those with you. For one, we should make sure that they are easy to select. We wouldn't want a tiny control that we need to zoom in really close to grab. That wouldn't be nice at all. We also need to make sure that the control is easy to discern. So what that means is if we have controls that are on top of one another, and we may have a few cases of that here, it'd be a good idea to resize those objects as well as to recolor them, just so we know exactly what is what controls what. So again, it's just useful to have this type of design, this type of control, just for easy use. And then the third thing we should keep in mind is that the control should be clean, meaning that its transforms should be zeroed out, so that when we need to get back to this default position, it's just a matter of zeroing out our position and rotation parameters. All right, but enough talk. Let's say we go ahead and get to designing this control spline. Now I'll show you a trick I like to use for creating these splines, and that's to create them from geometry. So let's go ahead and create a cube object, and we can make it editable. Let's go ahead and now move this forward. And watch, if we were to go to edge mode, we can just go in and select the edges that we would like to create a spline from. So I'll go and grab the 4 edges at the top, and I'll do the same for the very bottom. Remember, you could use the O key or the S key to zoom into your selection. Alright, so once we have these 8 edges selected, we can now choose Mesh, Commands, and grab Edge to Spline. Now it looks like nothing much has changed, but watch, if we were to go to our Objects Manager and expand our cube, there's our spline. So let's go ahead and separate it from our cube. Since we no longer need the cube object, I'll just go ahead and drag it above. Now we can select the cube and hit the delete key on our keyboard to remove it. Alright, so we have our spline made. Let's say we go ahead and move over to model mode so we can start to move this in place. And just FYI, if you do not see your manipulator, you can toggle the visibility of your gizmo by using Alt-D. So sometimes you may accidentally use that hotkey, or I find that it's very useful when you're wanting to kind of hide it temporarily just to see what's happening in the scene. Sometimes it gets in the way. But again, if you need to, you know how to hide it. I find it to be, again, a very useful feature. Alright, so let's say we go ahead and move this in place. We can go ahead and center it to our airship. We can do that from the top view. So we'll start here. Let's go ahead and grab our snap settings, so we can just go ahead and snap to the center of the airship by snapping to grid first. I'll go ahead and left click on the snap settings to go ahead and enable them. And now we can go ahead and hold down the left mouse button to get to our snapping properties, and I'll go ahead and tear off the menu. Okay, great. You can see that this has been updated. We no longer have a 2.5 snap. You can also see that there are some items that have been added. So for instance, if we need to grid snap, you can see that we need to enable our work plane snap first. And now we can go ahead and enable grid point snapping. So let's go ahead and do that. And now we can go ahead and start to drag our object to the center of our ship, just dragging it over to the grid point we see here. From there, we no longer need our snap tool, so let's go ahead and disable it. And we can now middle click to move back to our perspective view and start to move this in place. So let's move it forward in the Z-axis. And we'll move it down so that it pivots right underneath our thruster. So by controlling it from the center, of course, we won't have any weird rotations or anything like that. We have a very convenient way of controlling this object. All right, great. So, of course, it's not too easy to select right now. But the great thing about working with splines is that we can always resize them in points mode. So let's go ahead and choose points mode. I'll go ahead and switch the selection tool to the rectangle selection. And now we can go ahead and grab all of our points here. Press the T key to go to our scale tool, or of course you can do that from your toolbar, but you could start to kind of scale this out a bit. So that's great about splines. You could just go in and quickly resize these objects from point mode. I might just go to the Y-axis and kind of scale these down a bit more and kind of just bring up the shape for selection. You can go to our move tool and kind of bring this down so that the base of the spline is at the base of our scene. So when this ship lands, we have an idea of where its base is when the landing gear opens up. All right, beautiful. So we have our spline in place. Let's go back to model mode. Let's take a look. All right, so it's easy to select. Let's say we go ahead and rename it, and we could also color code it so it's easy to discern. So for animation controls, I like to use a prefix anim. Let's go ahead and name this anim underscore p VTOL. Great, just to match the naming scheme that we currently have. Another thing I like to do, just to get a little bit more descriptive, is just to add a 01, and this is what tells us how unique this object is. So when we start to create other objects like this, or let's say if we were to clone this object, we'd either want to rename that to with a 02 at the end, or that just means that we may need to just go ahead and use a new name for that object. But it's just a naming scheme I find works very well for me. But again, with this object selected, let's say we go ahead and now color code it. It has been renamed. So we'll go to the Basic tab, and we'll go ahead and turn on Use Color. And we can go ahead and choose a bright color. It's very easy to select. So I'll go ahead and work with red, and we'll choose OK. All right, beautiful. So our control is easy to select, easy to discern. Is it clean though? Let's go ahead and take a look. We'll go to our coordinates manager, and you can see that it's not clean. Right now, if we wanted to get back to this default position, we'd need the animator to remember these values. Not good. So if I were to try to go ahead and zero these out, just right-clicking on the sliders, notice where this object ends up. So that means if our ship was connected to this, our ship would be at this very spot. Not good at all. So let's say we go ahead and undo back first. And what we can do is go ahead and freeze the transforms of this object. So now it is clean. So if we start to animate and we need to get back to this default position, it's just a matter of zeroing out those channels. Beautiful. So let's say we have this control something. We'll go ahead and take our P VTOL group. Let's go ahead and just drag this so it's right underneath our animation control. And we could see is that now we are controlling our airship. Very cool. If you had plans on rigging the group directly, what you could do is go ahead and just freeze the transforms. It's always good to start from the 0 position, and we'll learn why that is as we progress further in our control system for our airship. Beautiful. Now, another thing I like to do, we're just about finished, is to create a layer for this object so we have a way to quickly hide our control objects. And this is great when we're setting up previews to kind of test our animation out in real time. We can go ahead and set up a quick render, and we can go ahead and hide our controls very quickly with our layers manager. So the only thing we're focusing on are the assets in the scene and nothing more. So with our control selected, we can go ahead and create a new layer from our selected object, and we can go ahead and rename this to controls layer. Beautiful. All right, so that finishes this lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to learn why it's so wonderful to work with groups.